We were just sitting here supercharging nicely, only had 15 minutes left, and then someone pulled in to the supercharger right next to us and went from 118 kilowatts down to 74. And we were like, no, why? There's another one open down in the end.
Idiot.
That's something you don't get with gas, that's for sure. Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and it's been a little while since we filmed anything on our long-term 2021 Tesla Model Y standard range. Well, a few months ago, Alyssa and I took a road trip in this thing, and this video is going to focus a little bit on what that was like, because we had taken some shorter road trips, kind of under 700 miles sort of thing, but this was 1,600 miles across multiple states, so a lot of supercharging, a lot of different types of driving. So this video is going to break down how it went, what we thought, what we experienced, the efficiency, the costs, and everything that goes into it. And we are going to have some more ownership updates coming up soon. We are at 6,890 miles on this thing. So we've rotated the tires, we've done some long trips, had quite a bit of ownership with it, and everything has been really smooth. You can see right here, we've actually got the wheel covers off. That's because when we went to rotate the tires, we had to take the wheel covers off, and then we gave them a good cleaning, and just haven't really put them back on. Alyssa likes how they look with them off. I don't mind it either way, but if we're gonna stick with it, I'd get some little caps that go right in there, make it look a little more proper. So let's head behind the desk and talk about our long road trip experience with the standard range 244 mile Tesla Model Y. But first, a quick shout out to Grizzly. Grizzly provides all of our charging here at Daily Motor, whether it's our Tesla or any of our press cars. If you need an EV charging solution at home, be sure to check out Grizzly, link in the description. All right, so taking a little look at our Teslafy application here. For those of you who don't know what Teslafy is, it's a wonderful resource that shows you all sorts of information about your Tesla that you might want to know, whether it's efficiency or how fast it was going, where it went, anything like that. It's a super useful tool. And today we're going to be using it to look at our Asheville trip. So first of all, where did we go? Well, heading out from our home here in Ypsilanti, Michigan, kind of near Detroit, we headed down, and actually zoom right into this, sort of nifty, down, charged into Toledo, and went through the mountains, through Ohio, down through the mountains into West Virginia, and made our way down eventually to Asheville. The goal was to go down to the Biltmore Estate. See that? We did. It was a wonderful trip. Went through, did some beautiful driving in the Smoky Mountains, came back up, stayed at a friend's place in Kentucky, and then continued on our way up through back home into Michigan. Overall, the trip was just about 1,600 miles, technically 1,570. And for those of you who don't know, our standard range Model Y has an estimated range of 244 miles, but that's in mixed driving and in ideal conditions. No one else in the car, no HVAC running, and also at mixed driving speeds. When you're cruising on the highway, you can expect to get, well, less. So going into this, we were a little trepidatious, expecting the trip to be stressful, having to stop often and charge up, maybe have range anxiety, be worried that we weren't going to be able to make it to our destinations. All in, we ended up doing 27 hours of driving, and on top of that, we spent 5 hours supercharging. So if you strictly did that math, you could say we did 2.25 hours of driving per supercharge, but it was a little bit more like every 1 to 2 hours of driving we were coming to a stop to supercharge, because you have to remember, we didn't fully rely on supercharging for this trip. We also charged at level 2 chargers overnight and hit a few level 2 chargers when we were stopped at various destinations. But when we were just cruising along the highway, trying to make it from supercharger to supercharger to cover a large amount of distance in the day, we were only making it 1 or 2 hours between supercharging. We can scroll down here. You see our trip from Michigan down to the first supercharger in Toledo was actually only 36 minutes, and we kind of did that intentionally. We did need to get a little tiny bit of juice, but also we just planned on stopping and getting some food, which posed a little bit of an issue during a pandemic, which we'll get to in a little bit. But other than that, after we took off, you can see we did 2 hours and 18 minutes between our next ones. That was a long haul, going through Ohio, a little bit slower speeds. We used 71% battery, did 137 miles. Next trip, an hour. Next trip, 50 minutes. Next one, an hour, 47. And then one down here, 2 hours to finally get to our hotel. So you can see, while the car could maybe do possibly even 3 hours from completely full to completely empty, that's not how you travel in an EV. You have to go where the superchargers are, and you also want to try to get to a supercharger with a fairly low state of charge and then leave at about 70 to 80% because your charging rate drops off. Let's take a look at this charge right here. We put 61% in at the supercharger. We showed up with 22% state of charge and left with 83. You can see at the beginning, the car was taking 148 kilowatts, so it was charging at just about its maximum rate. But by the time the car hits 50% charge, you're at about half the maximum charging speed, so 76 kilowatts. And then by the time we left at 82%, we're only at 31 kilowatts. So your goal is to get there with a fairly low state of charge and then get out before it gets too full. But there were a few times that we supercharged a little more than we needed to. Like right here, we got some lunch. So even though the car was down to a fairly low charging speed, we were still eating. So that one added a little more than we needed. Getting into the efficiency numbers. Over the entire trip, all driving considered, we averaged 267 watt-hours per mile, or 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour. For a large SUV like this that has the power and capability that it does, I'm really not too disappointed. I was plenty happy with that number. The average temperature outside was 55 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the trip. We did have some rain as well, so that would have affected our efficiency a little bit as well. Had it been a little bit warmer, we probably would have done even better. Our average speed over the entire trip is 58 miles per hour, so that's kind of right in that sweet spot of efficiency. But there were certainly times where we were driving this thing hard. Through some of these mountain roads, we were flogging this thing, and only twice did I ever have to use the brake pedal because of the regenerative braking. As much as I'd get hard on the throttle, it would slow itself right back down and recuperate a lot of that energy. But how does that translate into cost? Well, if we just look at the supercharging, we did 12 supercharges for 5 hours, ended up taking 299 kilowatt hours of juice, and that equates to $48 worth of supercharging. On top of that, we also have the charge when we got home, so that's about $10 worth. And then there was one overnight stop that the hotel didn't have a level 2 charger. I actually parked down the street at a charge point level 2 charger, and the first 2 hours were free, but after that we got charged. So it was just under $20 to do that charge overnight. So all in total, we did the trip for $77.81. Now looking at how that would equate if we had taken a gasoline car and done 1,600 miles, assuming gas cost $2.50 per gallon, we would have been averaging about the same cost as a 50 mile per gallon car. Now say we would have taken a 30 mile per gallon car, it would have cost us about $131 or about $53 more than it cost to take the Tesla. However, thanks to our referral codes from the YouTube videos and people using our referral code to buy Teslas, we've gotten a lot of free supercharging miles, and thanks to that, all of our supercharging was free. So we really only had to pay for that charge point charge and the electricity once we got home. Kind of a no-brainer for us. You get 1,000 miles of free supercharging for every referral you get, so as long as you charge at home, those add up. Another thing to consider is most of the performance SUVs with the same capabilities of the Tesla would require premium fuel. So this $2.50 per gallon figure could be much higher on a vehicle that we could have had this much fun with. Not only that, but no oil changes, really no maintenance costs at all other than a little bit of extra wear and tear on our tires and inching closer to the end of our warranty and maybe knocking a little bit off of our resale value. Other observations about this long road trip with the Tesla. Is it annoying to have to stop every 1 to 2 hours to charge? Yes and no. I will say there's a big difference between traveling and simply using your car for transportation. If you strictly need to get from point A to point B and you want to do it as fast as possible and you need to cover a long distance on the highway, a short range electric vehicle is not going to be for you, or even a medium range one like this standard range Model Y. You get really frustrated having to spend about 25 minutes every 1 to 2 hours driving on the highway just to get to where you're going. That being said, Alyssa and I had never gone on this route before, so we actually appreciated making stops in different locations that we wouldn't have typically stopped at. And considering the average supercharging time was 25 minutes, by the time you plug the car in, you get out, you stretch, you go into the store or whatever location you're at. Sometimes you gotta walk 5 minutes just to get into somewhere. By the time you get there, use the bathroom, maybe get a snack, and come back out, most of the stop has already elapsed and you're probably ready to go. Then there are those few stops that you just plan on getting a meal, and then you have no problem killing that time. In fact, there were a few times when the car was ready to go and we were still eating. Now, the asterisk with that is supercharging during a pandemic. It does make it a little bit more difficult to go into businesses and use their facilities. For example, when we made this stop down here in Toledo, we were planning on parking at the supercharger. It was at a Meijer, but there was a McDonald's right nearby. We were planning, all right, we'll plug in the car, walk into the McDonald's, use the restroom, get some food, and head on our way. Well, the McDonald's was drive-through only, so we actually had to walk opposite direction, go to the Meijer, use the bathroom, get back in the car, and then hit the drive-through, which took an extra few minutes that we could have spent charging, and instead we were sitting in the drive-through in our car. Definitely a first world problem, but still something to consider when traveling in an electric vehicle. Another thing to consider is the cabin that we stayed at our third night was very remote. It was buried in the boonies of Middle Kentucky, and there was no way we were going to make it conveniently from one supercharger to another supercharger, stopping in that cabin in the middle, so we had to charge at our location. That meant bringing an extension cable and plugging in to the kitchen outlet of this old Kentucky cabin just to get 15% over 10 hours charging at this place. And as you can see, the next supercharger we came in at 8%. So if we hadn't gotten that 15% overnight, we would not have made it. A few other things to consider regarding the Tesla Model Y in general is I can't think of any other vehicle that would have been so inexpensive to take on this trip and would have provided such a pleasurable driving experience. The highway portions were super easy, comfortable, relaxing, with a mixture of the autopilot, the good audio system, the comfortable seats. It was a super easy car for both me and Alyssa to eat up many, many miles on. And then when we got into the twisty mountain roads, this thing hustled. It's got the low center of gravity. It's not exactly a huge car to begin with. It's fairly heavy at about 4,000 pounds, but with rear-wheel drive and good steering, man, I was able to zip and zoom around these mountain roads and still get wonderful efficiency numbers. It's almost like taking the driving competence of a Porsche SUV and combining it with the efficiency of a Toyota hybrid and getting that sort of vehicle. I still lament the fact that people can't go out and get themselves one of these cars for $40,000 anymore. Now that Tesla has eliminated the standard range model and jacked the price up of the long range by about $1,000, you're looking at easily $50,000 just for a base Model Y. And that's a shame, and I'm really fortunate that we were able to get into ours for much less than that. Not only that, but Alyssa pointed out that the long road trip section, first day of traveling, we did almost 9 hours of driving and 2 hours of supercharging, and Alyssa's not a big road trip fan, but she pointed out by breaking it up into those digestible segments, she really didn't feel like we had been just stuck in the car all day. She felt like it was a fun and enjoyable way to travel. So yes, if you're just going with one person and trying to cover large amounts of distance, this sort of car is not for you. But if you're traveling with a family, people who have to use the bathroom often, and people who like to stop, you might really come to appreciate it. So all that being said, would we do another trip in the Model Y? Absolutely. Big turn from when we took our first cold weather road trip and kind of biffed on a few charging opportunities and didn't plan things out properly. Things were cold. That was a little bit of a turnoff for the car. But after taking it on a much larger road trip and planning things out just a little bit better, we absolutely would go again. As I've said before, EV road tripping takes a level of planning and commitment. So for those of you who don't like doing that, then an electric vehicle might not yet be for you. But for those of you who do like taking agency of your travel and your vehicle, hey, I recommend it. So thank you all so much for watching. We're going to have a little bit more Model Y content coming soon, a little bit of an ownership overview, as well as an overview of our first maintenance. And of course, we've got plenty of Model Y content up on the site. Be sure to check the link in the description for that playlist. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.